Arnold was a high volume trainer. He did some of the most crazy workouts in all of bodybuilding history. I've covered these workouts in detail, commenting on his 6-day per week training split, his pre-contest programs, and I've also discussed that he actually promoted less extreme training principles when it comes to building muscle mass. I've covered his 3-day full body routine recently, but today we're going to look at a different training program, and we're going to discuss his intro to split training system. This was a 4 to 5 day per week training plan, but before we jump into it, just to rehash, those crazy high volume 6-day per week plans that you see from him, those were reserved specifically for pre-contest training, when the goal was fat loss and peaking for a show. But when starting fresh as a beginner, Arnold actually recommended basic full body foundational training using a 3-day full body split done Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But then after that base was built, maybe 6 months to a year later, he recommended progressing into a 4-day to 5-day split where you focus on developing each muscle group individually. And that's the routine we're going to discuss today. And the general opinion by most people is that his 6-day per week training system, that's overtraining. Most people will say it's an excessive amount of volume and that it's just overkill for building muscle. I personally went on to discuss and to debunk that whole idea and explain why it's completely wrong to look at it as a muscle building system in general. But today, I'm going to cover the routines that he recommended to build mass, the ones that include more rest, the ones that were generally lower volume. But before I get into them, I will say most people again will look at this program on the surface and say it's too much. But as we dig in, I'm going to explain exactly why this routine isn't as excessive as you might think. So let's jump into the 4 to 5 day mass gain program that Arnold recommended. This was the exact routine, sets, reps, and exercises. On Monday and Thursday, you'll train the chest, legs, and abs. This is a very uncommon body part pairing today, but back then, it wasn't actually very odd to see done. This was actually a staple for Serge Nubret as well. And Arnold's philosophy and a reason for pairing these muscle groups together was around rib cage expansion. He felt that because leg training caused such a high degree of heavy breathing, he was already filling the chest with air. He was expanding and warming up the rib cage. In his mind, that meant that he could transition right into the chest portion of the workout right after legs. With that said, he started the workout with legs first. The routine was squats, leg extensions, and calf raises. The workout called for 5 sets of each exercise, done anywhere from 8 to 15 repetitions, depending on the movement. Here's the catch though. Arnold would have you work up to 1 top set for each exercise. He would do this for every movement. So while he was doing 5 sets of 8 on the squat, the first 2 sets, they would be fairly easy. The third would be a light to moderate set, and the fourth, a true working set. The fifth, that one was an all-out grinder. So while many people will look at this on paper and they'll say he's doing 20 sets just for his legs and then moving on to the next body part, most people will say that's way too much. But by today's bodybuilding standards, talking about things like RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or RIR, reps in reserve, you most likely would only count this as about 12 working sets. And as I mentioned so many times on this channel, when we're talking about high volume training programs, ones like this, done by many old school bodybuilders, they managed to pull off such a high volume of training by having the intensity of each set match the volume of the workout. So since there was a lot of sets done here in this workout, many of them were done with reps in the tank, and only a few were all out hard sets. And after he completed the leg portion of his workout, he would move right to chest. Arnold performed only 2 exercises here, the flat barbell bench press and the flat dumbbell fly. These were by far his 2 favorite movements for the chest. Arnold attributed the strength and the mass of his pecs to the flat barbell bench press, but he will always say that the fly movement is his #1 exercise responsible for developing one of the most impressive chests in all of bodybuilding history. Both the flat bench and the dumbbell flies were done for 5 sets each here, 8 to 10 repetitions each set. Again, he used that exact same method, working up to 1 heavy set over 5 progressive sets, starting with a light weight on set 1 and finishing with the heaviest weight he could perform on the last set. The lighter sets served as a warm-up and to pump as much blood into the muscle as possible. And after he finished his chest workout, Arnold would finish the workout with abdominals and forearms, which he did every single training session. This workout consisted of 7 exercises, plus abdominals and forearms, for a total of 35 sets. An extremely high volume of work by today's standards. But again, we're talking roughly 7 to 14 all-out sets, with the rest being submaximal. Now, on Tuesday and Friday, Arnold would train the shoulders, the back, and the arms. And his reasoning behind pairing these muscle groups together is since after training the shoulders, which includes a lot of tricep work, he would move on to train his triceps directly. For that same reason, after he trained back, which would work the biceps indirectly, he would move on to directly train the arms. His shoulder workout consisted of press behind the neck, done for 5 sets of 8 repetitions, and dumbbell lateral raises for 5 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions. Again, he used that same weight increase formula across all sets of both of these exercises, working up to his heaviest weight on set 5. After he completed the shoulder portion of this workout, he would go right into back work. This started off with behind the neck chin-ups. He then would move on to the bent over barbell row. He would perform 5 sets of each exercise for 10 to 12 repetitions each set. For pull-ups, he would stick to his body weight here, doing 5 sets of 10 across each set. But when we look a little bit deeper here, just like with his increasing weight method, the first sets would be fairly easy. But by set 5, because of all the fatigue from each set, his sets would become much more intense and much closer to failure. For the barbell rows, he stuck with the normal set progression, adding weight to the bar each set. Rows were a staple exercise for back training. It wasn't like it is today, where you have literally hundreds of row variations, various pieces of equipment, and so many different angles to target the back. Back then, you most likely had a barbell, dumbbell, and maybe a pull-up bar. You would have a vertical pulling movement like chin-ups, then a horizontal row, like a basic barbell row. After training back, Arnold would then move directly to train arms, hitting the biceps first with barbell curls, dumbbell curls, and then incline dumbbell curls. Each exercise was done for 5 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions. And then it was on to triceps. The exercises done here were the standing French press and the lying tricep extension. Again, both performed for 5 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions each. And that was it for what I would call a monster training session. That's 9 exercises done for 5 sets each. Yes, we're talking 45 sets. Hard gainers would cringe. The science-based community would say it's not optimal. But again, that's if we're looking at it on paper. In real life, it tells a different story. That's more like 10 to 20 total working sets, max, and probably closer to 10. And that's all he would recommend you do in the gym at this stage. 4 total training sessions per week, which is pretty far off of what most people think he actually promoted when he talked about building muscle, especially when compared to the 6-day double split training system. And one other thing that he recommended was to keep this base plan at just 4 days. But as you become a little bit more advanced, you can add in a 5th day for your weak body part to train it directly. And if, and only if, you do in fact have a weak point, you should then dedicate that 5th day to train it, just that one body part, and give it individual attention. And Arnold also stressed that you should definitely skip that 5th day if you're still focused on gaining more mass to your entire physique, as that added rest day will be much more beneficial if dedicated to recovery rather than training. Now, I'm not saying I'm a huge fan of this routine, nor do I recommend doing so many total sets. But when we look at it deeper and apply it to real life, Arnold actually recommended building mass on 4 to 5 days per week, doing a few basic movements, 2 to 3 for most body parts, aiming to progressively get stronger, and doing a low to moderate amount of working sets for each body part, and hitting each muscle group with roughly a twice per week frequency. This is the perfect example of basic old school mass gain training principles. Sure, he went to the extreme with volume here, and maybe not all 5 sets of each exercise were necessary, but if you stick with any basic 4 to 5 day routine, pick a few basic exercises, and if you focus on doing this and hammer away at it consistently over a long period of time, you will see significant results in muscle mass. And if you're looking for the exact methods I personally recommend to build more mass, using proven old school bodybuilding training methods, I highly recommend you check out my old school mass gain training programs in the description below. And as always, if you guys want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.